What are you doing there? What are you doing there, buddy? Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. You can do that too. Good morning. No light, no sun. Watch history. Frick. Today I learned well, practicing some and dreaming is hard. You can't. None of these. Yeah, here you go. Go. A party. Do you want a party? Silence. Quiet. Oh, dang. How did that happen? There you go. In this town, we call Maricopa. It's a desert. Lots of sand. It looks like Mario Brothers 2. You have your tornadoes, your cyclones, storm systems. It's pretty crazy. Well, hello and good morning. I want to welcome you to another day. Today is 23 days. Counting. Numbers. Four 55 a.m. Well,
Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. Today, I want to talk to you about a 90s indie comic, and it only lasted 7 issues, plus a few spin-off issues based on some supporting characters. Not that many issues, but this is October. I like to talk about horror comics. I figured it's the perfect time to address Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by creator Jhonen Vasquez. A lot of people would say that it's just shallow, and all it is, at best, black humor with a lot of violence. But others will argue, no, it's actually about something. Well, that's what I want to analyze today. So I want to go through those 7 issues, talk about the character of Johnny, talk about what the creator does with these comics, and ask the question, is it actually about something worthwhile, or is it just surface level violence? Let's dig in. Growing up in San Jose, California, Jhonen created the character of Johnny when he was a teenager. He published him in comic strips in his high school newspaper under the title Johnny the Little Homicidal Maniac. He became truly interested in comics when he discovered his older brother's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics. Jhonen graduated in 1992 and began attending film classes in college, but dropped out shortly after he started. He had some one-page Johnny comics published in Carpe Noctem magazine in 1990, and in 1995, independent comics publisher Slave Labor Graphics began publishing Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. The series consisted of 7 issues, finishing in 1997, and featured the spin-offs I Feel Sick and Squee as well. The comic has some side comics within it, but mostly focuses on the story of Johnny, or as he calls himself, Me for short. Johnny is, as the title describes, a murderer. He ruminates from time to time on why he feels compelled to kill, and even espouses that he would rather live in a world where it doesn't happen. but kills nonetheless. His victims are mostly chosen for being rude, but it isn't always explicit why he has some people chained up and tortured in his house. So this comic is violent, let me make that clear. And Johnny, the main character, is not sympathetic. He's a murderer, but he is understandable. Also, this book is couched in terms of being black humor. It's a comedy book as well as horror. Another thing going for it is that the artwork features characters that have expressive faces, but little more than stick figure bodies. So you combine all that along with the fact that it's black and white, and a lot of the violence is more palatable than if it had been presented in more realistic terms, fully colored. Johnny is mostly manic and displays signs of insanity by speaking with a bunny pinned to his wall, as well as two doughboys. Is Johnny hearing voices, or is there a supernatural element animating these creatures and compelling him to kill? There are hints towards the latter, but everything in Johnny's world is vague. He doesn't recall his family or why and when he started to kill. And if there's a knock against the book, it's probably that the only way Johnny has to express himself is to kill. He kills people even if he acknowledges they are good people. That occurs when one man who is confident he will go to heaven and Johnny will go to hell. Johnny says he admires the man's worldview and convictions, but kills him anyway. It's a bit one note. Johnny's motivation for killing is that he has a wall that he says demands fresh blood. He doesn't keep painting it, the blood changes color and disappears. Johnny kills pretty much anyone that crosses his path, and he never seems to encounter any resistance. There are never people trying to stop Johnny, like the police or escaped victims. Because Johnny is pretty awful, there are two recurring characters that emanate a small amount of hope in the world, and Johnny seems to care for them both. The first is his young neighbor, who Johnny names Squee after the frightened sound he makes when he first sees Johnny. Squee is neglected by uncaring parents that blame him for their miserable lives. Johnny protects Squee from a child predator in one issue and Squee's father towards the end of the book. But he also constantly terrifies Squee and gives him horrific nightmares. The other character Johnny cares for is a girl named Debbie he goes out on a date with. In fact, it goes so well that Johnny decides he can't bear to have this moment tainted by future bad times. So he attempts to kill her. Debbie successfully fights and escapes, spending the rest of the run in her locked apartment. Johnny doesn't make either Squee or Debbie's life better, he just complicates them, but he also shows strength in not trying to kill them. Well, at least he doesn't try to kill Debbie after the first time, and he feels a sense of remorse for that. In fact, it leads to him calling her to apologize, which of course only triggers her PTSD from her encounter with Johnny, and eventually it actually leads to Johnny getting killed and dying, and then the comic starts to explore things on a metaphysical level. In between killing people, Johnny is sometimes depressive and he wants to kill himself. These attempts invariably fail, and he continues to kill. At one point, he creates a suicide machine with a gun hooked up to a telephone, believing that he has no meaningful connections in this world and no one will call him. Debbie ends up calling him, which ends up shooting Johnny, killing him, and Johnny dies at the end of issue 4. At this point, Johnny accidentally goes to heaven, where he ruins it for everyone, causing chaos and disorder. He is then sent to hell and meets the devil, calls himself Senor Diablo. Senor Diablo explains that humanity occasionally gets clogged with the worst of people. So people like Johnny exist to cull them. He is a flusher. He flushes people. This cosmic enlightenment does nothing to make Johnny happy or content. Johnny is sent back to Earth. While he was gone, we learned that his wall really did need blood, and a tentacled monstrosity breaks out of it to eat the victims in Johnny's house. A large portion of issue 5 is spent following this monster chasing some of Johnny's victims as they try to escape his vast sub-levels and watching it tear apart Johnny's prisoners. It can take a while to understand what the point is, if any, of the comics. Johnny rants and raves about humanity, but it doesn't always mean anything. But once things go to the afterlife, we can start to see that this is a meta narrative about the author. Jonan Vasquez drops hints that Johnny used to be an artist but lost his talent, and he has no way to express himself. Killing is perhaps his only outlet. He feels forced to follow through on an unsatisfying creative pursuit, painting his wall. When he fails, that leads to utter chaos. Johnny is the unbridled id of a creator lashing out at a world in a setting where there are no repercussions. Johnny is eventually sent back to Earth by the devil to continue his work. But the comic ends on an open note where Johnny decides that instead of killing, he's going to try to now live his life simply and purely by logic and just see if that leads to a better world, if not for himself, then for the rest of humanity. Johnny is a terrible character, but his comic was a hit with goth audiences as well as comics readers. In a somewhat related note, the comic was sold in Hot Topics stores for a while. Johnny and Debbie both dress in a typical goth manner. Johnny feels isolated, but works to stay that way as he avoids sex and even being touched by others. He works to transcend the physical world and eventually gets to visit heaven and hell. And Johnny spends a lot of time musing on the futility of his existence. He feels like he's forced to kill, albeit with no consequences, and he thinks about everything in terms of death. Not only does Johnny feel obligated to kill to feed the wall, he blames his victims for making him choose them. He's not a good person, but his angst is certainly relatable. And if you look at his killing as a way to fight back against his creativity being stifled, the story starts to make sense as a way to understand the author. The wall is like editors or publishers forcing Johnny to only make art in a certain way. His audience is represented by his victims, where he blames them for wanting what he's giving them. If we look at the book in these terms, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac is a treatise by the author complaining about consumerism, shallow audiences, and the bottlenecks that hinder the creative process. Jonan even retaliates against his fans, as shown in issue 7, when Johnny gets a disciple that wants to be just like him, and Johnny invariably kills him the same as anyone else. Other ideas explored in the comic include the fear of sleep. One of Johnny's doughboys has a V and question mark symbol on his tummy, indicating you should question sleep. Squee is terrified of his dreams. Johnny wants to kill himself, but fears it, which would be like a permanent sleep. Once Johnny returns from his journey into the afterlife, he becomes obsessed with a cockroach he names Mr. Samsa, after the character that turns into a bug from Kafka's Metamorphosis. Kafka also shows up when Johnny kills some people at a screening of a Kafka film, who would talk throughout the entire movie. Johnny comes to admire the Spartan, logical existence of a bug, which helps influence his decision to end the story by deciding to live his life by logic, not mania. So is Johnny the Homicidal Maniac a comic worth reading? Well, ultimately, that's going to depend on you and how black you like your comedy, because this comic is nihilist. It is the darkest of dark humor. At the same time, I think that it's going to resonate more with younger readers. I know it resonated more with me when I was younger, and I think that that's because we're dealing with heightened emotions thanks to hormones at younger ages, even into our early 20s. And that angst is definitely represented in this comic. On top of that, the artwork is essentially stick figures, but it's very expressive, it's very dynamic, and it's very much unique. It's identifiable. If you see Jonan Vasquez's artwork, it's identifiable as his work, and I think that that's a big part of what led to him getting his own cartoon show, Invader Zim. He has a unique style, and I think that this book is about something, but it's not necessarily about explicitly what you're reading. Instead, I believe that it works as an allegory, showing us what Jonan Vasquez thought, maybe unintentionally, about the creative process. Those are my thoughts on Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. But before we leave, let's take a quick look at what fan art came into the channel this week. Tyler Swan made some art featuring me as Galactus with plenty of Kirby Crackle and Infotron Surfer.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Guys, remember, we got a release date of August. There's a lot of people out there that would love to see you come check out their showing.
Maybe where's the golf cart?
All right, I'm out.
The city needs the White Dragon back.
The prophecy tells of a duel between the two dragons of a shared crystal. One, the white dragon, and the other, the dark dragon fueled by a fiery rage. The prophecy calls this entity Dragon Prime. Who the hell are you?
The one with the power to give you what you desire.
This city will not rest until Eric Reed is held accountable.
The world never needed the White Dragon.
We can't do this without you. You want to pick your color? All of this guilt, you'll have to let go.
Eric, let's go!
For us, for the world, for your family.
The spiritual fight is still strong within you.
You can't stop me. Let's find out.